Well, hello everybody. Today we're going to be looking at how to complete the square and how to rewrite things completing the square. So you might want to have your journal ready to go, take a few notes with me. We're going to go through 4 problems. This shouldn't take too long, but you do need to write things down step by step and see if you are able to find the pattern. Alright, so here we go. We're going to go ahead. We got to get it from this form right here to this form right here. Well, you'll notice that there is not a 4 there. It's just an x. So that gives me the clue that I probably need to divide everything by 4. So we'll divide everything by 4. And that's going to give us an x squared. We're going to be left with a 7x, and we are simply going to leave this as 49 over 4 equals 0. All right, we're not going to put that into a decimal, just leave it as 49 over 4. All right, so let's think about this. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this value known as b. And in order to find the c value when you are completing the square, the c value, you might want to put this down, the c value will always equal half the b value squared. So let's see what we're going to do. We're going to take 7. And we're going to divide it by 2. We're going to take half of it, and then we're going to square it. And that gives us 49 over 4. Well, interestingly enough, it looks like we already have that there. So it looks like this square has already been completed. So I really don't have to do a whole bunch of work right here. All I have to do is realize that when I did this, it became this right here. And I'm done. All I have to do is factor it. They're like, what do you mean? All you have to do is factor. Factor this. Well, how do I factor that? Well, when you complete the square perfectly, it's always going to be x plus whatever this number is divided by 2. So I'm just going to put 7 over 2 squared. All right? So, and put equals 0. Now, not all of them are going to be this easy. All right? So not all of them will be as easy as this one right here. But right now, all I'm going to do is put a 7 over 2 and a 0. I'm not expecting you to understand everything the very first one, but hopefully by the 4th problem, you'll be like, okay, I see the pattern. All right, let's put 7 over 2, put a little 0 right there, hit check, boom, let's go on to the next question. All right, now this one looks like it's in vertex form. What is vertex form, you ask? Well, I will tell you what vertex form is. So, here we go. Here's vertex form. I'm going to put f of x equals, there'll be an a value. That'll be this number right here. It's going to be a 1 in this particular case. We'll do x minus h, close parentheses squared, plus, okay. So, in vertex form, the vertex is always the h and the k value. All right, the h value represents the x value of the vertex, the k value represents the y value of the vertex. But this right here is known as vertex form. And the purpose of completing the square is to be able to get this form, which is known as standard form. This is standard form. So if you're taking notes, I'm going to write down what standard form is and changes it to vertex form. That's what completing the square does. Changes it from standard form, which is a x squared plus bx plus c. All right, and it changes it to this form. Now the only shortcut for standard form, the c value always gives you your y-intercept. In vertex form, you always find your vertex. Okay, and then if you go back at factored form, that always gives you your zeros, and that's something we've done before in a previous video. So we're going to take the standard form, we're going to change it to vertex form. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to change f of x to y. So I'm just going to put y equals, I'm going to put x squared minus 9x plus 14. Now, this negative 9, that's our b value. So let's go ahead and just take our b value. All right, let's take our b value, take half of it, and square it. And that will always give us our c value. So here we go. We're taking negative 9. We're going to divide it by 2. We're going to square it, and that's going to give us 81 over 4. Well, you know what? That 14 right there is not 81 over 4. So this square has not already been completed. All right, so here's what we're going to have to do. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put an empty box right here, plus a y, equals x squared minus 9x plus an empty box plus 14. And I'm going to put the c value that goes with completing the square. So when we take half the b value and we square it, we're going to put 81 over 4 right here, and we're going to put 81 over 4 right there. All right, now we're almost done. All we've got to do is a couple of things. One thing right here, we're going to take this guy, going to factor him. This is a trinomial. It's a perfect square trinomial that beautifully factors to x minus 9 over 2 squared. All right, well, how do you know how to factor it? Basically, when you complete the square correctly, whatever half that number is will always go right here. I'll say it one more time. Whenever you complete the square correctly, half of this number, this b value, will always go right here. So it will always be x minus b over 2 squared whenever you complete the square correctly from ax squared plus bx plus c, where the a value is 1. Okay? It will always, I'm going to put plus. Ours happens to be minus because there's minus, but it'll always be half the b value squared. So that's a cool little trick that you could write down in your journal in case you needed help with that. So here's our final step. All we're going to do is we're going to take away 81 over 4 from this side. We're going to take away 81 over 4 from this side. All right? And so here's what we have. We have, I'm going to change y back to f of x. All right, it's just this function notation. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out what 14 minus 81 over 4 is. So we're going to do 14 minus 81 over 4, and that gives us negative 6.25. We're going to put negative 25 over 4. All right, negative 25 over 4. So we'll put minus 25 over. We're just going to keep it as a nice improper fraction. So if you ever needed to use Desmos, you can certainly use Desmos when you're doing this. Let's see if I can find, I'll get my Desmos open here real quick. Alright. So you could use this as your little graphing calculator to help you out. So if you had like 14 and you took away 81 divided by 4, you can see it's negative 6.25, but you can hit this little thing right here, and it changes it to a fraction. Decimal fraction. Decimal fraction. So we're just going to leave that as negative 25 over 4. And that's what we're going to type in to the Khan Academy. So right here, our a value is 1. We're going to put minus 9 over 2. And then we are going to put minus 25 over 4. Now before we do this, what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you in Desmos how these are exactly the same function. They're just written in different forms. So I'm just going to put y equals x squared minus 9x plus, I think it was plus 14. Yep, and then over here we're going to write it in vertex form. Alright, y equals, or I'll even do f of x so you can see. F of x equals, and I'm going to even put a 1 there, alright, because we're going to have to type in the number 1 into the Khan Academy. Minus 9 divided by 2. We're going to square it, and we're going to put minus, I think it was 25 over 4. And I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. I want you to see that these are the exact same parabola, exact same quadratic function, but this is in standard form. And what does standard form reveal? Once again, standard form reveals your y-intercept, but vertex form represents your vertex. And there's our vertex, 4.5, all right, and negative 6.25. And so 4.5 is this 9 over 2, and negative 25 over 4 is that negative 6.25. So there's your vertex from your vertex form. So type in a 1. Make sure I put a, even tells you right here, make sure you do a simplified improper fraction. Minus 9 over 2 minus 25 over 4. And that should be it. Alright, let's go ahead and try that one more time. Completing the square. Alright, we'll do 2 more. Okay? Hopefully they won't be the same problems. Alright, here's another problem. Let's go ahead and we're going to rewrite the equation by completing the square. So go ahead and write this down. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put an x squared plus an x minus 72, oh, sorry, my bad, equals 0. There we go. And so right now we need to look at our b value. Even though you can't see it, there's a 1 there. So our b value right there is a 1. So we're going to take half of 1 and we're going to square it. So remember, we're taking the b value, dividing it by 2, and we're squaring it. And that will give us the c value. So a half times a half is 1/4. We can clearly see that negative 72 is not equal to a fourth. So what I'm going to have to do to make room for it is I am going to add 72 to this side. I'm going to add 72 to this side. So here we go. We're going to take this 1/4 and we're going to place it right here at the end. We're going to put plus 1/4 equals 72. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So I added basically a fourth to this side, and I added a fourth to the right side. So this is our c value. Remember, our c value will always have to be half the b value squared. So all I have to do now is finish factoring. So if you remember the kind of the trick that I talked about last time, I said all you have to do, let's see if there's a, oh, right here we go. All you have to do is when you're factoring is take half the b value, and that's going to help you factor it. So let's go over here and just take a look at half the b value. All right, our b value is 1. There's half of it right there. So how do I factor this? Right here. What does this become? It becomes x plus a half squared equals 72 and 1/4, because 72 plus a fourth is 72 and 1/4. Well, we're actually going to change that to an improper fraction. So we're going to take 72, we're going to multiply it by 4, and then we're going to add 1. And that becomes 289 over 4. So remember how to change it from a mixed numeral to an improper fraction. You multiply and then you add. So here's going to be our final answer. X plus 1/2 squared equals 289 over 4. And that's what I'm going to type in right here. On this one I'm going to put a half, and over here I'm going to put 289 over 4. And obviously you can use a calculator to help you out with that. So here we go. Let's type in a half divided by 2. And over here we're going to type in 289 divided by 4. And see if I messed up. I did not. It was correct. All right. So how could you check to see if your answer was indeed the exact same? All right. Well, you could go to Desmos. All right, and you could type them both in. So we're going to type one in. We're going to put, let's take a look real quick. Oh, put plus x. And then put, my bad, minus 72. Alright, now this one you have to put y equals, and it's going to be a little bit tricky. We're going to put x plus 1/2. Alright, and we're going to put squared. But then what we actually have to do, we have to move this across. So it's going to be minus 289 over 4. So if you take this number right here and you move it across the equal sign, basically you got to subtract it from both sides. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to put minus 289. divided by 4. And then if you zoom out enough, you can kind of see that these are the exact same form. All right, this just happens to be in vertex form, and this is in standard form. All right, let's do one more. We're going to take this right here, and we are going to change it into vertex form. We're going to be factoring out of 4 this time. So what we're going to be doing right now is we're taking this standard form, we're going to be changing it to vertex form. So this right now is in ax squared plus bx plus c form, and we need to change it to a parentheses x minus h squared plus k form, which is vertex form. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to change g of x to y just to make it a little bit easier. So we're going to put y equals 4x squared minus 28x plus 49. That's the first thing we're going to do. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to factor out a 4. We're going to factor out a 4 because that's what's going to go right here. That 4 is going to go right there. We're going to factor out a 4. And when we factor out a 4 right here, that's going to make it minus 7x. I'm going to put plus an empty box because we're going to complete the square right there. We're going to put that's going to be the c value. I'm going to move this plus 49 right over here to the right. So I'm just going to take that 49, just move it off by itself. We'll worry about that later. Now, here's the tricky part. If I'm going to complete the square right here, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So I'm going to put the box right over here. But here's the thing. This value is going to actually be multiplied by 4, so I'm actually going to put 4 times c. All right, so here we go. There's our b value right there. We're going to take negative 7, we're going to divide it by 2, and we're going to square it. And that's going to become 49 over 4. So 49 over 4. Well, when I multiply that by a 4, those 4's are going to cancel out, and 4 times c actually becomes 49. So it looks like the square had already been completed. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and erase this real quick. So now, all we're going to do is we're going to take this, and we're going to factor this real quick. It won't take long. All of this factors to x minus 7 over 2 squared. I'm going to bring down the 4 right here. I'm going to bring down the y right here. And we're going to bring down the 49 right here. And this 49 right here. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it so you can see it a little bit easier. Alright, so here we go. The very, very, very last step that we're going to do is simply subtract 49 from this side and subtract 49 from this side. And that zeroes out. And so, what is g of x equal to? G of x is equal to 4 parentheses x minus 7 over 2 squared. That's what g of x is equal to. So I'm going to put 7 over 2. I'm going to put a 0 right there. And then we're going to type it into Desmos so you guys can see that this is vertex form and this is standard form. So we're going to go ahead and type those in right now. Clear that out. Clear that out. I'm going to type in y equals 4x squared minus 28x plus 49. And then over here, our final answer was g of x equals 4 parentheses x plus, sorry, not x plus, x minus 7 over 2. Oh, that's where I messed up there. I need to make sure I put a minus there. Alright, I'm glad I didn't type that in yet. Again, because here it says minus, that says plus, so I got to put plus a negative. Good thing I caught that one. Oops. And we're going to put squared, and you can hopefully move this real quick. Hopefully you can see that these are the exact same, right, function in standard form and in vertex 1. Where's the vertex? Right there at 3.5, comma, 0. So now, type in a 4, put minus 7 over 2. Now, don't forget that negative, and then right here just put a 0 to fill that in, and you're done. Alright, so basically you have a whole bunch of examples, 4 examples, and just go through those steps, and you should be able to get 4 out of 4. You all have a good day.